The New York Giants made it official today, firing Brian Daboll as their head coach. Didn't get off to a great season, but now the Detroit Lions, in their own problems with offensive coordinator crisis, are looking for an offensive coordinator potentially. And Brian Daboll has now been flirted as the number one name to end up in Detroit by 2026 as the next offensive coordinator. So let's dig in and find out just what went wrong with Brian Daboll and why he may or may not make perfect sense in Detroit.
Pressured by Hutchinson, he goes down again!
All right, welcome back to Rock Down Detroit Lions. Hey, I'm Will Rock. Appreciate you guys all joining me today for this video on Brian Daboll, the next offensive coordinator potential for the Detroit Lions. Do us a quick favor. You know the drill. Hit that like, share, and subscribe, and be part of the channel, man. All the way to the Super Bowl is right here. So if you love your Detroit Lions news, rumors, updates, and everything else, it's right here on Rock Down Detroit Lions. Let's get into it, man. What the hell went wrong with Brian Daboll? And my biggest question, your biggest question is, look, if he can't coach a team, why would he be a good offensive coordinator for us? That's what we're going to unpack, because sometimes coaches just shouldn't be coaches, right? They shouldn't be head coaches. Sometimes they should just stay where they were. But that's not going to happen, right? If you get an opportunity to level up at your job, you're for surely going to take it, right? And that's what he did. And it worked out for him. So let's just walk right into it. Disastrous 2-8 start this season for the New York Giants. And I'm not even going to pretend like I know everything about what happened there. So I did a bunch of research, right? And what I found makes perfect sense as to why he was let go. But at the same time, you have a rookie quarterback. You had a rookie running back who was an all-star to start. He gets injured. I mean, the new quarterback's been injured, hurt. I mean, I can't say how many times. Jackson Dart. So it's not all his fault, right? It's not all of his fault. But I think that this has been a culmination of things. And what you're about to learn right now as to what was reported, may be the reason why he is no longer in New York, and may or may not be a good reason why he should be in Detroit. So the firing obviously represents one of the most dramatic falls from grace you would find in recent history in the NFL. I mean, he went from one of the best in the league as an offensive coordinator just 3 years ago, winning the Coach of the Year award after leading the Giants from a 9-7-1 record to the playoffs and beating the Minnesota Vikings. How do you go from that to this is my question in just a couple of years. Where did it all go wrong for Brian Daboll? And after unpacking a little bit of this, here's what I found out. They ranked in the middle of the pack in 2022, right? The offense plummeted. And multiple sources within the Giants organization pointed to several key factors leading to his release today. Number one, Daniel Jones disaster. Number two, the offensive philosophy failures. Number three, the roster construction issues. Number four, leadership and culture. And number five, in-game management, which is probably one of the most critical outside of building a roster, in-game management. So after the promising 2022 playoff run, the Giants committed $160 million to Daniel Jones, who they then walked away 2 years later, right? How does that make any sense that you just invested all of this money in this guy and then you turn around and walk away from him? It raised a lot of questions, not for just Brian Daboll, but the ownership as well. But the question really loomed for him: could he sustain the development? Right? Could he continue to develop this quarterback or any quarterback? So that was probably the first major shoe to drop was fumbling the Daniel Jones issue. And then, despite his reputation as an offensive guru, Daboll's schemes just became stale and unpredictable. The opposing defensive coordinators were sniffing it out. They figured out what the Giants were doing, what their tendencies were, and Daboll just failed to adapt and adopt anything new to help them win. Thirdly, you get into the input that he had on personnel decisions, particularly at the skill positions, and they just didn't work out. Lack of explosive playmakers, all of that was kind of called into question. Fourth, sources were indicating that he is a very intense, demanding coach and has a coaching style that reflects that, and kind of wore thin in the locker room. As the losses kind of mounted up, coaches tend to kind of get away with a little bit when you're winning football games, right? You could be a Matt Patricia and win a bunch of football games, and players are probably going to still go play for you. For him, it wasn't working out because he's a little bit rough, demanding, like they said, very intense. Locker room kind of turned against it. Again, this was reported as alleged things going on, okay? And then you have his decision making in critical moments. Fourth down calls, clock management, challenge flags, you name it, he just couldn't figure it out and wasn't having the best of luck in the world. Look, I don't think he had the best roster in the world. I think the GM is just as much to blame as he is. So his decision making in critical moments became an issue. Here's what I'm going to say, though, or here's what I'm going to ask you. Why would the Lions even consider this guy for the offensive coordinator position with all of this stuff going on? Here's my argument. If he's this bad, there has to be something else going on for him to be a great coordinator with Josh Allen, with the Buffalo Bills, and then for all of this to go down just doesn't make any sense. But you remember an old head coach by the name of Jim Schwartz for the Detroit Lions? It's a hell of a coordinator. Sucked as a coach. And sometimes you just need to stay a coordinator. And Jim Schwartz has been one of the best defensive coordinators in the league for several seasons now, has won a Super Bowl after leaving the Detroit Lions. And maybe Brian Daboll shouldn't have taken a head coaching position. Sometimes you're just not cut out for it, and man, is the ice thin, at that position anyway. So timing is everything, right? We're going to switch gears here. We're going to talk about the Lions for a moment because the timing with Dan Campbell taking control over this offense this weekend in Washington, especially after that Vikings loss. I mean, the Lions are managing just 65 rushing yards in a game, 21.7 points per game over the last 3 games. It's pathetic compared to what we've been doing. And then I kind of laugh when I'm reading this because what team doesn't want to score pretty much 22 points a game? There's a lot of teams out there that can't. We used to beg to score 22 points a game, and now scoring 22 points a game is not good enough. We are that damn good? That's pretty impressive. But anyway, Dan Campbell made the decision to take over the play calling duties from John Morton. Ahead of the Week 10 matchup with Washington, man, it was exactly what this Lions offense needed. Exactly. And it was like an injection of life support. This offense was just no energy, no creativity, just appeared lifeless at times. And especially when you're putting, up more than 21 points per game prior to this, like way more. We were scoring 40 points. Like in the first 4 games, we were averaging like 40 points a game. We go from that to cut it in half. Clearly something was wrong with John Morton. So the results of Dan Campbell doing this were immediate. It resonated immediately with the fan base. It was no secret by now that his players, and him have a very close relationship. They ride or die with Dan Campbell, right? They just do. So the minute he decided it was time to step in, pull the reins back from Johnny Morton, and then what happened? The offense responded. They responded in a huge way, lighting up the scoreboard, lighting up the stat lines. Game recap, 546 total yards, 44 points scored, scored on every drive except for the final possession where they kneeled down. The offense just looked explosive, right? Creative and in rhythm. And why am I bringing this to your attention? We're going to be talking about Brian Daboll, right? Or that's what we're supposed to be talking about. Brian Daboll did the same thing. Brian Daboll was one of the best offensive coordinators in the league. So the question now, is the move permanent with Johnny Mo? Is Dan Campbell taking it over for the foreseeable future? Or is Brian Daboll coming now? Is he coming now to start learning this offense coming in as an assistant, and then maybe next year he gets an opportunity to be the offensive coordinator. There could be a possibility with that. Could be. Obviously, the fan reaction to all of this was pretty swift. They're all saying, a lot of people, hey, just fire the dude. We're done. We saw what we needed to see. We have the offense. Dan Campbell just proved it to us. It's one game. We need to see it happen more and more. But it brings me to this question. Does Brian Daboll fit in Detroit? Is he a guy that you can see in Detroit, being part of this equation, part of this team? You don't think he's going to butt heads with Dan Campbell? Or maybe you do. Here's what I'll share with you. His work with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, it represents one of the most impressive offensive coordinator resumes in NFL history. His ability to develop a very raw quarterback coming out of college into an MVP candidate, designing a creative and aggressive offensive scheme, and consistently producing a top 10 offense year after year after year, it made him one of the most elite coordinators in the league. It also makes him one of the most elite coordinator candidates right now, if that's what he chooses to do. For the Lions, a team with Super Bowl aspirations, a Super Bowl window, elite offensive weapons, and a quarterback that needs the right system, right? The right culture, system, everything, right? To make it work. You have to have a guy that you can work with, a guy that understands your players. Daboll could be it. Daboll has a high ceiling, right? We already know what he's able to do in Buffalo. You see, if he was just strictly calling plays in New York, I bet you that team would be better off. I can almost guarantee it would be better off. So where does that bring us today? What are the reasons as to why Daboll would be good in Detroit? I'm going to give you about 6 more things here. Number 1, the 3 reasons I'm going to give you why Brian Daboll would be good in Detroit starts with his proven elite quarterback development traits. Daboll's work with Josh Allen again in Buffalo 2018 to 2021, again, it was one of the most impressive quarterback developmental stories in modern NFL. He transformed Allen from a 52.8% completion percentage rookie into a 69.2% completion MVP candidate quarterback by year 3. Now, did Josh Allen have something to do with that? He absolutely did. But if you go back and look at Josh Allen as a rookie, he is nowhere close to the player he is today. And he was nowhere close to the player he was in his second year. Josh Allen's progression under Brian Daboll was impressive. 2018, 52.8%, 10 TDs, 12 interceptions. In just by 2020 was 69.2%, 37 TDs to 10 interceptions, 107.2 passer rating in a Pro Bowl. That's big time. That is big time, big time. So how does that fit for Jared Goff? Right? We have a player and a quarterback in Jared Goff that's playing at an all-pro, Pro Bowl level year in, year out, and Daboll's expertise is building quarterback-friendly schemes, emphasizing on the fundamentals and creating simplified reads and complex pre-snap looks to unlock really what could be another level in Jared Goff. So he has it within him to bring a high-powered offense to Detroit. And he has familiarity with developing quarterbacks, namely Josh Allen. Now, is Jared Goff and Josh Allen? No, they're 2 polar opposite quarterbacks. They're both good pocket passers, but Josh Allen loves to use his feet. So there's that difference. And no, I'm not worried about the offensive scheme trying to make Jared Goff run. That's not going to happen. The second thing I'll give you, the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator success, it's pretty simple. Daboll's track record as an elite offensive coordinator is there. He transformed Buffalo's offense from a 23rd in scoring in 2017 to 2nd in scoring by 2020. The 2020 Bills were 2nd in total yards, 2nd in scoring, top 5 in efficiency metrics. He won the NFL Assistant Coach of the Year that year, and his offense has consistently produced top 10 offense in yards, points, and efficiency. How does that fit in Detroit? Well, the Lions have championship aspirations, do we not? We have an elite offensive weaponry, tree, if you will. We've got a stable of guys in Detroit. Daboll has proven that he can call plays at an elite level when he has these things and when that's his sole focus. So there's another check mark. Third thing, his aggressive mentality and his creative play design. Daboll's offenses in Buffalo ranked among the league's best because of how creative they were. Deep passing concepts, the yards per attempt were all there. He wasn't just dinking and dunking it around. He took advantage of pre-snap motion, used it to create, confusion among the defenses, but he used it to pretty much put the ball where he wanted it to go on just about any play. Innovative RPO concepts. We have the guys that can do that as well. And play action designs, which we do a ton of. And in the red zone, super efficient. Third down, conversion rates were some of the highest in the league. So how does that fit for Detroit? It's aggressive, creative approach, aligns perfectly with Dan Campbell's offensive mentality, and it would maximize the Lions' explosive weapons like J-Mo, Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Gibbs, you name it, Demo, anybody that you want to throw into the mix. Brian Daboll will be able to find a way to get them the football. There are some risks, and I am going to say that the risks are real. The Giants' offensive failures cannot be ignored. They just can't. I think that Daboll's play calling became predictable, and his quarterback development possibly regressed. Or was it, going through what he had to go through this year from, going from a vet to a rookie, and both of them kind of, look, Jackson Dart's good, but he's a rookie. So again, I'm not going to put all that weight on Daboll's shoulders. I wouldn't. But his offense is ranked near the bottom of the league, with New York. While his roster talent definitely played a role, and I think that Daboll still must bear the responsibility for what happened in New York and the eventual decline, I think is his fault. But I think there's more of the picture that maybe we're not understanding or seeing just yet. So the risks are real. So let me give you a couple of reasons why maybe Daboll is not for Detroit. How about what I just mentioned? The offensive stagnation and predictability. We're dealing with that with Johnny Moe right now, or we were. So the most damning concern that I have is this offense becoming stale, predictable, and easily decoded by opposing defenses, just like it was in New York. Or, after the initial success in 2022 in New York, somehow making it to the playoffs at 9-7-1, the Giants just fell off a cliff dramatically as the defensive coordinators really started to figure out all the tendencies of the Giants. They were not a good football team, but he was able to bring them all the way and help them stay in the hunt. And to me, that shows more of a good quality than a bad quality, the way that it ended. The red flag, if you will, would be if Daboll couldn't maintain the offensive creativity, and innovation in New York, what would make us feel comfortable about him being able to do that in Detroit? Does that make sense? The Lions need someone that can evolve, stay ahead of the defense, not someone whose scheme is going to be predictable. And I don't think that Dan Campbell would let him be that way, honestly. I think that it would get addressed earlier now that Dan Campbell had to deal with what he had to deal with Johnny Moe. I don't think he'll let that happen again. The second thing, the pattern of quarterback regression, even though that is an issue, like when Daboll developed Josh Allen, he did it successfully. The pattern since then was kind of troubling. Josh Allen initially regressed after Daboll left Buffalo, which I think was key to see that, this high-powered quarterback took some steps back, which was indicative of Daboll leaving that team. But Daniel Jones fell apart after the 2022 season. Was that Daboll's fault? Maybe, maybe not. How about the rookie quarterback management so far that's been criticized in New York? Is that all Daboll's fault? Could be. The concern would be that Jared Goff is playing his best football right now, and maybe you want to maintain that. Maybe Daboll wouldn't be able to maintain that. And I kind of feel the opposite, because I think that Jared is going to be Jared, and I think that Jared is going to progress with or without the offensive coordinator's help. Does that make sense? I think that he is going to be who he is. The last thing I'll throw at you, or maybe there's a couple more things. You got the fourth quarter collapses in the game management. Like, that's huge. You can't have, poor clock management, questionable play calling, conservative, decision making, or the inability to close out winning games. Can't have that. So the problem for me would be the Lions are building a championship contender. They need someone who can finish games confidently. They need someone that can make smart decisions in critical moments, not someone with a track record of late game failures. Again, I'm not going to put it all on Daboll. The philosophical fits. Look, would he come in and embrace Dan Campbell's physical run style or run first identity? Probably. But there's always the question. Or would he opt for more of a pass heavy approach that conflicts with the way that Dan Campbell has a vision? Probably not. But again, I'm going to throw it out there. And context does matter. Like I've been saying, to be fair, Daboll hasn't had a full complement of offensive weapons or the ability or stability really at the quarterback position after leaving Buffalo. So it's not all his fault. The Giants roster was significantly less talented than what he had in Buffalo, and severely less talented than what he would have in Detroit. And with the GM, Joe Schoen, failing to really provide any adequate weapons at all at the wide receiver position or on the offensive line, how can you blame Daboll for everything going on? I don't think that you can. Here's my recommendation. If the Lions decide to move on from John Morton, I think that Brian Daboll should be at the top of their candidacy list. I really do. Important caveats to go along with this, though. 1, thorough vetting has to be required. 2, the philosophical alignment has to be there. They have to be able to agree upon exactly the way that the offense is going to be run. The Jared Goff fit. Daboll must articulate a clear vision for maximizing Jared Goff's strengths. And you've got to say that at this, at the meeting, right? You have to come in and say, I've got a plan. I've got, an accuracy, a play action, a quick processing plan for Jared Goff. Lay it all out. Whatever it's going to be, it better be. Accountability for failures, he's got to come up with that too. He has to own his mistakes in New York. And I think that, of explaining what happened would probably help everybody feel better. The bottom line is I think that Brian Daboll is a high-risk, high-reward candidate. His ceiling as an offensive coordinator is among the highest in the NFL right now, and it's been evidenced by his success in Buffalo. He hasn't had the greatest of runs in New York, but again, I'm going to throw Jim Schwartz out there. Any one of these guys can go back to being an offensive or defensive coordinator and lead a league, lead their unit to success, and I think that he can do it. The one thing that I haven't pointed out, and this really matters a ton, is the Daboll and the Dan Campbell connection. They're more than just colleagues at this point. I think that what many don't realize is that Brian Daboll and Dan Campbell share a genuine professional relationship and a mutual respect that dates back over a decade, even longer than that. The two coaches, they worked at Miami as staff in 2011. Daboll was the offensive coordinator. Dan Campbell was the tight ends coach. So they both worked closely on the offense together. In Dan Campbell's own words, during the Giants and Lions joint practices in 2024, Campbell was effusive in his praise of Daboll, in calling him, quote, one of the smartest football minds I've been around. And so I think that, having these two together, I think that, Dan Campbell has trust in the guy because he's worked with him. He knows, a little bit about him. The relationship between these two runs a little bit deeper than just their Miami days as well. Dan Campbell himself has strong ties with the Giants organization, having been drafted there in New York in the 3rd round in 99, playing tight end for 4 seasons. I mean, there's a lot of little connections, but at the end of the day, I think that the shared connection and what it means for Detroit would be that there's a genuine respect and friendship between these guys. Dan Campbell has said it multiple times. He respects his mind, and I think that the existing relationship, it could eliminate many of the typical concerns about a cultural fit or the philosophical alignments and, how the offense would be run, and if he would come in and just try to, run him, kind of run over Dan Campbell a little bit and just do his own thing. I think a lot of that stuff is nipped in the bud. I really do, simply because they have a relationship behind the scenes. So at the end of the day, I'm asking you, does Brian Daboll make sense for Detroit? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll get you guys in the next one. Take care. Go One Pride.
Pressured by Hutchinson. He goes down again.